Welcome, everybody. This is Moose and Brian here from OccupyFantasy.com. At Occupy Fantasy on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, any of the social medias you see, we're probably on them in some capacity. I'm your host, Moose, at CFB_Moose on Twitter/X is where you can find me. Host, co-founder, and data guru here at OccupyFantasy.com. Apologies in advance for any of the microphones. I know for the last couple of weeks, people have been saying to fix the microphones. We've done some fixing. It's hopefully a little better, but got a new microphone in coming up. So hopefully by this time next week, my voice will be just as good as Brian, which is a great segue into Brian. How are you doing today?
Moose, what's up, man? A little later than we've been doing the past couple of weeks, but no UFC today, and wanted to get a little information with the 4 o'clock elevation. So I'm doing good, and happy to answer everyone's questions here for week 3.
Absolutely, yep. And I realized that the Discord the Discord was messing up, so now we can see our faces pretty good now. So appreciate that. Bunch of technical difficulties here when we do these late shows sometimes. So I appreciate everyone joining in advance and doing all this stuff. So as we get into it, what is this show? It's Beyond the Model. We talk some fantasy football stuff, DFS, prop bets, survivor picks, anything really about football for about 30-45 minutes. And so we already have a couple questions here. First one from Jose Morales says, let's get this money. Juwan Jennings looks like the best cheap piece in week 3. Brian, do you have any opinions on Jennings this week?
Yeah, I think if I check our Occupy model, I'm going to see his projected ownership right now, because I have a feeling if he's anywhere nearly owned at all, I think he's probably overvalued. You think of the situation for the 49ers. Obviously, McCaffrey is out. Deebo Samuel is out. George Kittle is out. So the likely beneficiary, one would think, would be Juwan Jennings to step into the number 2 receiver role. However, I don't feel like, and history has shown this too, he kind of stays in his wide receiver 3 blocking role. I wouldn't expect a huge increase in targets for Juwan Jennings. Yeah, we have him at basically 10% projected ownership on DraftKings. I wouldn't play him at that number. I think best case scenario here is like 5 or 50 and a touchdown. If he gets that, obviously that would be great. Ronnie Bell's going to step in. Jacob Cowing's going to step in. Eric Sauber, the tight end's going to step in. So yes, while they haven't really had Deebo and George Kittle off the field much together, history has shown us that Jennings isn't a guy that gets a huge target bump. It's more likely that Ayuk just gets like 40 to 50% of the targets here.
Yeah, and I imagine as I pull up the model, he's in the top 10 or whatever. He's almost 30% owned, which is really high for a wide receiver on both sites. And 6,200 seems like a pretty, yeah.
Yep.
It's Ayuk, yep. Perfect. Drew says, could you please tell me a good defense for FanDuel for single slate game, please?
Yeah, which game, Drew? Is there only one single game slate tomorrow? If there's more than one, let us know. If not, let us know which slate you're talking about.
Yep. And Ed, totally not the FBI, is in here for Tolbert is my best cheat piece this week. Yeah, I guess that's he comes with some crazy takes, Brian. And what do you think about Tolbert?
Yeah, so Jalen Tolbert last week was 6 for 82 or something.
Yeah.
Was the beneficiary of I don't know, whatever reason. Tolbert obviously getting more run now this year. Cooks is still the number 2. CD's obviously the number 1. I guess teams are trying to scheme CD out of the equation. Maybe Baltimore does the same tomorrow. But as Chris said in the Daily Plug, as Chris said in his video, which I encourage everyone to go check out after you watch this live stream. It's already up. It was posted this morning here on our YouTube channel. But it definitely lays it out in the plug as well on the site, is that the pricing is still so soft that the Curtis Samuel theory doesn't really come into play just yet. Once we get tighter pricing, once we get some teams on bye weeks and we get smaller slates, then we want to start to incorporate those cheap pieces within our stacks. So many players are mispriced and so many underpriced players across the league that you don't have to include in stacks that, sure, I think Tolbert's a fine play. In fact, I'm playing him on the single game showdown slate for that Dallas game, but still a little thin to play a wide receiver 3 on a main slate this early in the season.
Absolutely. Yeah, I get that. Yeah, that's why the model has him ranked pretty low for various reasons, stuff like that. And we have Kristen here, says, here for the Bo Nix slander. There will not be any Bo Nix slander in this channel. For those who are following who don't know, when we released the model, the NFL model for this week, it has Bo Nix number 4 right now. 1%, less than 1% projected ownership. $5,100 on DraftKings, $6,500 on FanDuel. And Brian, as we talk about, the model is built for high risk. It sees a pretty cheap quarterback. Tampa Bay has pretty quirks for quarterbacks, and if you can get a quarterback to get 12 to 16 points with that type of savings, it's pretty great. So, what are you playing Bo Nix this week? Do you have any opinion on him? I'm curious what your thoughts are.
I haven't decided yet. I mean, I think you can get similar upside at similar cost, if not lower cost, in the Raiders and Panthers game. But it's more so, it kind of goes back to the question that we just talked about with Ed and the cheap piece. And Chris, once again, I don't mean to keep touting this, but he did lay it out perfectly. And the plug is teams are running more than ever. And as a result, we haven't seen very many ceiling performances from the quarterback position. Maybe this changes over the course of the season. But as a result, paying up for quarterback has not been the way so far, whether in low risk or high risk in NFL in 2024. And we've seen 5K quarterbacks win the Millionaire Maker basically on every slate so far. And so someone like Bo Nix going up against Tampa Bay, who pressures a lot, and they try to pressure a lot, they blitz a lot. They haven't been getting as much pressure so far this year, dealing with 3 to 4 defensive injuries. So the model's picking up on all of this. And Bo Nix, due for some regression in the yards per attempt department, has some underperforming receivers. Yes, he sucks. So that could be the reason why everyone is underperforming. But you look at the price tag, you look at the state of the NFL, you look at the defensive injuries. Everything lines up for Bo Nix to be a great tournament play. And you could play him and Devon Vele, who had 8 targets in week 1, missed last week, the rookie slot receiver. That's what, like 9K combined. And you can pay up at every other position. It's a really good small field play. Because, again, like you said, Moose, if you score 12 points with that position, and maybe 12 points is a stretch for Bo Nix, but you score 12 points at that position, that sounds like not enough. But in this day and age, it really is so far.
It is, yeah. And there's also, you talked about the wide receiver. There's also Dulcich, who's only 2,900, super cheap. And when you have it on the other side with Tampa Bay, you have like Godwin, you have Evans, you have people who can score a lot of points that you can run it back with if that's something that you want to do. And they are kind of expensive, so it kind of balances it all out. And when you're playing a quarterback that cheap, you don't need to get, if you can just get 12 points, we'll be excited, and tournament plays for that. So, perfect. So we have all right, we have a bunch of questions in here. Let's do it. So we have
Let's do it.
Yeah, DeGen Stoner says, would Akers be good or bad chalk in your opinion? Just price and injury history.
I don't care about the injury history. That doesn't matter, right? Anybody can get hurt in one game. Price, obviously, he's a great play for his price. But I am a little worried because, as we keep saying, the pricing is extremely loose. You don't necessarily need a $4,700 running back on DraftKings. 4K on FanDuel, that's getting a little ridiculous. Plus, he's going to get goal line work. So it's much harder to get away from it on FanDuel. But in PPR scoring, where we know that Dario Ogunbowale is going to take third down looks, and we have so many other running backs that are just $1,500 more that are three down running backs. We have other cheap receivers. I get it. His ownership is pretty high. I asked Jake these questions in our MMA streams. If you had to choose one, 0%, 100%, or match the field, I think I would go 0% on Akers in tournaments. I get it. But again, it is what he allows you to do with your lineup. If he scores 5 to 7 points and allows you to pay up at other positions, that certainly is worthwhile. I just think that the lack of passing game work could come back to haunt him in this game. And again, it's not necessarily something we need. If he only scores 5 to 10 points, which is, again, good for his price, we have other guys that can do that, and we can build more balanced lineups without digging that deep in the salary range. So again, it's just most of the early season dynamic of the pricing and everyone running the ball is really, it calls you to think a lot about how to build your lineups.
It really does, yeah. I will sit around doing things, and it's like, yeah, can I build it this way? Can I build it that way? And then I see Cam Akers, and I just see our model, again, around 30% projected ownership. That seems like a lot. Yeah, it's something I'm going to have to think about. And that's what I like about our lineup builder, not to segue into any type of ad or anything, but the fact that you can save multiple lineups in your single entry builder, if that's something that you're wanting to do. You can do different groups. You can say, hey, I want to build lineups without Cam Akers, and I want to build it with him, and then kind of go back and forth and test all your stuff. So I really like doing it that way.
And I will say, like, generally, when we have this underpriced backup running back, we've talked about this past 7 years on these shows, recap shows or preview shows. Generally, they're great plays. The model picks up on that typically, and those guys are number 1 or number 2 in the model. Akers is all the way down to number 8 or number 9 in the model this week, signifying a little bit that, hey, maybe he's not worth the ownership that a typical backup running back at his price tag would warrant.
Exactly. Yep. So, let's see here. Jake says, is Mason good or bad chalk this week?
I think Mason's good chalk. He's hashtag good.
He's number one in the
That's
model for
one
a reason.
thing in the model, and he's just far too cheap on DraftKings. $6,200.
Yeah,
I just asleep at the wheel in the pricing.
absolutely. Yep. Another question here from Daniel. It says, going forward, DK or Rice PPR?
Let's see, DK or Rice. That's rest of season, I assume, for season long. I will say, let me think here. DK or Rice. I'll
That's a
go.
tough pick.
Yeah, I'll go Rashid Rice. I mean, yeah, I'll go Rashid Rice. His role is extremely valuable.
Yeah, I think that too. Yeah. Let's see here. Ed says, I'm going to ask now so I don't forget later. Who's the best worst play and the worst best play?
I guess the worst best play is, I guess, Akers by this definition. The
Yeah.
best worst play is Bo Nix, I guess, if we're just gonna keep
Yeah.
it with the theme of the show so far.
Makes sense to me. Yeah. Let's see here. Jake says, I never really play showdowns during main slate. Do you think those showdowns are mostly filled with pros?
In the high dollar stuff, you'll see like 75% pros, or you might see like 100% pros on the primetime showdown slates. But the smaller dollar stuff, there's all kinds of random people playing in there. So you would think that pros would be in those too, but if you stick to $5 and less, you'll see some really bad players. So I do think that's the way to go if you have the time, or you're looking to find bigger edges than maybe the main slate. Yeah, I think it's certainly a place you can look.
Yeah. Jose says, which of the dual threat quarterbacks makes the most sense? I'm thinking of running Fields naked. What are your thoughts on this?
So they lost their left tackle in practice on Friday, so that obviously scares me about their entire offense, which therefore scares me about Justin Fields a little bit. I think Hurts, if you're paying up 7,300 in one of the best game environments on the slate, Lamar in another great game environment, those are probably the two I would look to. And obviously Anthony Richardson is always in play as well. So I would say the model has it pretty appropriately ranked here as far as Hurts, Jackson, Richardson.
Makes sense to me. Let's see. Where are we at next? Okay, great username. Don't know how that wasn't taken. Deontay or Jennings on FanDuel, not getting to anyone on San Francisco.
Yeah, Deontay gets the quarterback upgrade. I'm not on Jennings this week. I don't think he gets a huge role change. And San Francisco on FanDuel, yeah, you probably should still get to Ayuk and Mason over there as well. There's enough salary savings to get to them. I mean, look at Mason Mason on FanDuel, obviously much higher price there compared to DraftKings. DraftKings Mason is 6,200, 8,300 on FanDuel. That's a little more price prohibitive, but I think you can certainly get to it. And then you look on FanDuel, and Ayuk he's number 8 in our model on DraftKings, around the same on FanDuel, and only 6,500 on FanDuel. So Ayuk is, I think if I had to get the one on FanDuel, it's Ayuk just because of the price savings. But I think you can make Mason and Ayuk work. They're going to get tons and tons of work with Debo and Kittle and CMC out.
Yeah, definitely. Ed here says, my favorite non-duped play this week is Hurts naked or with Saquon. With Shaheed, Saints are good at taking away non-slot receivers and will force Philly to the ground game. And Brian, do you think Shaheed can keep up his like 70-yard touchdown run every game?
Yeah. Derek Carr has like double his career touchdown percent at this point so far, so that'll come back down to earth. But you have to admit that they're using their players properly for a change. Tons of motion, tons of play action, getting guys in favorable matchups, great play designs. So yeah, Shaheed's going to continue to be valuable, and that's fine. That's fine to me. Yeah, no issue with me playing that. And again, you don't need to see even running back this early in the season as Chris lays out in the plug. So I think if you just play Hurts and Shaheed is probably fine.
Yeah, that seems like a dangerous combo right there.
Mm.
Let's see here. Jen says, sweet, thank you for your time and your insight. I appreciate that. And a couple other people saying nice, good thoughts, stuff. Hawk Dark says, what's your thoughts on Connor? He ranks good in the model for DraftKings high risk.
Yeah, should get a ton of work as he has been through 2 weeks. Got game scripted out last week when they blew out the Rams. But anytime you see a guy top 5 in the model at sub 5%, that is always a fantastic high risk play.
Absolutely. Yeah. Jean Paul says, definitely listening on the lineup builder this week. It hurt me on Thursday night showdown, Pats Jets. Yeah, that was a fun game.
Yeah.
Definitely. John says wide receiver Josh Reynolds in DFS is the best play.
I mean, if we're going Bo Nix, then why not play another terrible play in Josh Reynolds? I prefer Vele. He's coming back. I said at the beginning of the show, Devon Vele. He's only 4,000 on DraftKings, 8 targets in week 1, should regain the slot role. Let me check one thing. I want to see if the Broncos elevated Lil Jordan Humphrey from the practice squad. Let me see.
Actually, you mentioned that
Yeah,
he is.
so
Go
they
ahead.
didn't. So they did not elevate Lil Jordan Humphrey, which means Vele is full on go for the slot role. Love Devon Vele tomorrow. I much prefer him over Josh Reynolds.
Yeah, and you mentioned 4,000. He's actually only 3,400.
Oh, I think he was 4,000 when I was building the showdown lineup earlier. So
Okay.
just a hint. Just a hint. He is in my main showdown lineup for that slate.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of those things where it's like, you can build lineups different ways. You have your stars and scrubs. You have your balanced one. If you do like a Devon Vele, Bo Nix, you have like they're like $7 in total. I have like that in my pocket right now. So you can pay for them, and then you can pay it for a bunch of these other really high quality guys. Pay it for some defenses, however you want to do. So a lot of different ways to do your lineup.
There was like
Um,
five comments about Zamir White. People are having different opinions on Zamir White. Should be the best matchup he's gotten so far. He actually got more work last week than he did in week 1, which was interesting to me. But Zamir White's a sneaky play. What do we have in his ownership? Zamir White.
like
Um,
9%, 8%, under 10%. And the thing for me, Brian, is like we've talked about this all the time. If you can find a reason to play somebody under 10%, play him. Like, you know, obviously I wouldn't do that with a 15, 20% owned chalk play, but if you're like, hey, this guy's sneaky, I like him for XYZ, yeah, you can put him in your lineup. It works.
yeah, I mean, again, just know that you don't have to do that with every position in your
Of
lineup.
course, yeah, yeah,
Just if that's the one differentiation point, then yeah, for sure.
yeah. Let's see here. John says Josh Downs for Indy making season debut. Bears defense leads NFL in big plays given up. You have any thoughts on Josh Brown this week?
I'm not sure if that's true about the Bears' big play. I actually don't think that's true at all. But Josh Downs coming back is interesting, fully healthy. Got the extra week of full practice, which is always important for those high ankle sprains. I'm really trying to figure out, and again, maybe this is showdown only, maybe it's season long. How do they handle? Because Josh Downs is going to slide right back into the slot role. Obviously, Pittman's safe on the outside. Pierce has outplayed Adonai Mitchell so far, so I think Pierce remains. Maybe he still rotates with Mitchell. Maybe Downs does take a couple plays off as he gets reconditioned. But yeah, Downs should be right back into a nice fantasy role, I'd imagine.
Yeah. Chris here says my bad non-plug-in door stack for you. Redacted QB Amari with neighbors bring back.
Cleveland and the Giants, Deshaun Watson with Amari Cooper, definitely underperforming so far. They actually get one of their starting tackles back, Jedrick Willis. They thought they were going to get Jack Conklin back too. It turns out he was a late scratch today too, but at least get one of their best offensive linemen back, who they did not have for the first 2 weeks of the season. That should be helpful and help make their pass protection look a lot better than it did weeks 1 and 2.
And Jose says, so if you guys don't like Juwan Jennings as a cheap piece, who would you suggest?
If you look at I'm just going pure model rankings on who are our model likes that is cheaper and or the same price as Juwan Jennings. Let me find where Juwan Jennings even ranks in the model. Juwan
That's never a
Jennings,
good sign.
yeah, he's all the way down there, 27. Okay, so Jennings, 4,100. We like Jalen Naylor better. We like Quentin Johnston better. We like Wandale better. We like Deontay Johnson better. Um, I guess that's about it at 4,100. So not a ton of guys. I would prefer to build a different line of construction to where you don't need someone like Juwan Jennings in your lineup.
Makes sense. Question here from Dot Bets. A reminder that Dot Bets does this show tomorrow. Go ahead and check it out. Sponsor it. He says, are you playing more running back and flex than wide receiver for high risk? Chris mentioned in the plug. Just wondering if you're implementing that for high risk too. And Brian, for me, I've started to do more running back in the flex. I'm not sure what you've been doing.
Yeah, I think you have to, just given how much teams are running the ball. Only 7 teams are passing over expectation through 2 weeks, which is an insane number to think about. So yeah, I think you have to. We've seen running backs be in winning lineups so far. I'm sure that'll change. And again, you don't have to. I wouldn't force it. If you're making one lineup, I would do it. I would still allow receivers. But I think naturally you're going to end up with more if you use our lineup builder or use whatever optimizer. You're going to end up with more running backs anyways. But yes, I do lean that. I wouldn't say 100% running back, but I would definitely have more running back than receiver in flex.
The Gen here says Naylor or Vele, cheap for me. I don't know where Naylor is in the model, but probably Vele for me.
Yeah, and again, I'm only playing Vele in main slate in large field GPPs and or stacked with Nix. Naylor still a wide receiver too, not someone you have to play. I mean, here's the thing about the loose pricing: like you can get wide receiver ones for way cheap, right? To where you don't have to play wide receiver twos and threes unless you're in the largest GPPs possible. So these are nice. I mean, maybe in season long you're asking about this, and then you're in real trouble if that's the case. But I think let's take a step back here. We're asking about all these cheap guys. That you don't really have to play these guys. There are so many good players that are priced too cheaply that you can build more balance and not have to worry about punting with some of these bad players.
Exactly. Yeah. It's if you have access to the model, just go ahead and check that. I mean, some of these guys that we're talking about that are super cheap, they're far down in the model for a reason. We talk about, if you find a player that you like and you can correlate it for whichever reason you can play them, but kind of stick to the guys closer to the top of the model or the plays that Chris listed in the plug. And for majority of your contests, and if you're throwing your 1 or 2 darts in the large field contest, then you can start playing guys like that.
Yes, exactly.
Let's see. Yep. Jake says, since Washington isn't on the slate, which team has the worst secondary?
It's actually Detroit somehow. I'm still not sure how that's possible, but Detroit against Arizona. There's a potential game site for you. They've allowed almost 50 fantasy points to receivers. Washington's number 1. Philly's right behind them. San Francisco is the next tier down, but Detroit and Philly are your answers. And when you're facing the absolute greatest show on turf in the Saints, that is not what you want to see if you're Philly secondary. So it looks like Detroit and Philly are the secondaries to target this week.
Yeah. Prince says, if Zamir White is an option, you aren't drafting properly with running back heavy. So
they're still talking about Zamir White somehow.
He might be 300% on tomorrow. But How to Win says, what do we think of Mahomes on the FanDuel slate?
Let's see. So yeah, I think he ranks relatively highly in the model, like top 5 or top 6. Yeah. Obviously the biggest concern for Mahomes is they're last in the league in average depth of target. You would think with getting Xavier Worthy, obviously if Hollywood Brown was there, maybe this would be different, but if he's going to dink and dunk, it's hard to play him, especially at his price tag.
Yeah, definitely. Normally Mahomes is up there. And the fact that, he's, what is it? All but one quarterback above him is actually cheaper. So model's picking up on that. He is kind of expensive. Average depth of target's pretty low. So
yep.
I don't mind it. Let's see here. Ed says the Bears D will score negative points this week. AR Downs Taylor will beat the Millie Maker this weekend. And
remember, Ed's a Colts fan, so let's take it with a grain of salt. And right above him, who was it? John says 12 big plays by the Bears. Yeah, the Bears have given up 5 plays of 20+ yards this year. They've given up exactly 0 plays of 40+ yards. So I don't know. Maybe John needs a different data provider, but the stats are completely wrong. Bears do not give up big plays.
Let's see here. Jean-Paul says, which tight end breaks the DraftKings main slate?
That's a great question. If it's anything like what's happened so far, it's probably a cheap one. Is it Foster Moreau with Taysom Hill out? Is it, let's see who's at the top of the model.
There's one guy, really, there's someone up there near the top of the model on DraftKings that's a little sneaky.
You talking about Brenton Strange?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that is the Monday slate. So maybe he wins the Monday Millionaire Maker.
Yeah. There's the Monday Millionaire Maker on that.
Which, by the way, we have a two-game slate on Monday. Jack and I will be doing a pre-recorded video Monday morning. So Jack's back on the channel, so look forward to that. If you're not already, make sure you're subscribed. That way you get notified when Jack and I post that video Monday morning.
Yeah, there's actually not many cheap tight ends for the main slate on there.
I was kind of surprised. Yeah, it's Bowers, Goddard, Ferguson. Not the expensive guys in McBride and Laporta, but so maybe it's I don't know. We talked about the squeaky wheel thing with Demario Douglas on the Thursday night game, and obviously he got his targets. There was some rumblings about getting Dallas Goedert the ball more. He's number 2 in our model, so Maybe Goddard's the guy. Only 5% projected ownership. So if we're looking for a narrative-based aspect who breaks the slate, maybe it's Goddard.
Yeah, cool. So we're all caught up on questions here. So Brian, let's take a couple more minutes here, and we talked about this try towards the end of each show, but we like to take a wide receiver less than 5,000 on DraftKings, less than 10% owned. So we're gonna see if they can score a touchdown. I think we all collectively were like Shaheed last week, and he did it. So
Yep.
nice. So we filtered that out, Brian. 5,000 or less on DraftKings and 10% or less. I'm doing that here on our model page. Some pretty gross plays this week.
You said 5,000 or less, and what's the ownership qualifier?
Less than 10 or less.
10 or less. So 5,000 or less, 10% or less. Let's see. We could go with McConkey, who is dealing with a quarterback who has a high ankle sprain. They already said they want to run the ball even more. I will say, I mean, if we go again, I'm sliding further. I'm gonna say Jordan Whittington taking the Cooper Cup role. Obviously, if we played preseason DFS, you know how great he was stepping into a very fantasy friendly role. So I'll say Jordan Whittington. Another one, Moose. We talked about Bailey already, so I'll give you a chance. I'll say Whittington was mine.
For me, I'm gonna say this one kind of stuck out to me. Rashad Bateman at only 3,800, 1 to 2% owned. This is a guy I think that any type of high-powered offense with Baltimore, I think he can sneak one in there.
All right, and I know Chris has been on Bateman earlier so far this year. Maybe this is the game Bateman breaks out when no one's on him.
Yes, fingers crossed. Tyler says, new subscriber. Thanks for subscribing. He says, need some advice. My squad is decimated with injury. Should I start Alec Pierce or Darnell Mooney? Also, Chuba or Samaje?
Damn, sorry, Tyler. That is rough. I'll say Mooney because we're not sure how the Indy receiver situation is going to play out with Josh Downs back. Pierce could play like 20 snaps. Maybe he plays more. I don't know. But at least Darnell Mooney's going to play a lot. Should be in a pace-up matchup against the Chiefs. So I'll say Darnell Mooney. And then really like Chuba this week. Took reins of that backfield last week in week 2. Now they get Dalton with a quarterback upgrade, hopefully. So yeah, I'll say Chuba and Darnell Mooney.
Okay, that works for me. And Chris, as soon as I said something about Bateman, popped into the chat. So appreciate that. And Wick says, what do you guys think about the tight end for the Niners, Saubert or Tongs?
I think it's Tolbert. You listened to Brock Purdy talk about it, and Tolbert was the first guy he mentioned. We're not thrilled about playing any of these guys. Maybe they catch a couple of passes, but they also called up Braden Willis off the practice squad. He's more of a pass catcher. He caught more passes in the preseason than these guys. So it sounds like a pretty messy situation. I think if I had to choose, it would be Tolbert, though.
Oh, that makes sense to me. Yeah. And
should we talk about Survivor Moose before we close out?
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah. So we talked about Survivor. If you're in the DraftKings Survivor, there's not many left. So I think it's down to like 25, 26 people or so. Yeah, absolutely decimating every single week. I know I have still a handful of entries left in that one. And so let's take a look, Brian. Will there be another 30+% week of people getting out? I'll throw that question to you first.
No, last week was pretty crazy. It was 7 of the top 9 most popular picks lost. So I don't think we'll see that again. We got to have a chalky week here pretty shortly.
Yeah.
Right now, we expect Tampa Bay and the Raiders to be the 2 most popular teams, probably rightfully so. Tampa Bay is a little questionable just because of 1, the injuries, and 2, you're always a little sketched out by taking the most popular team. This is the 3rd best week to use Tampa Bay according to future scheduling. They only have the 4th highest money line, so it doesn't add up. Whereas the Raiders, this might be the only chance you can use the Raiders. So I do get that against Carolina. Maybe the quarterback change with Andy Dalton scares that a little bit, but there aren't as many options this week, Moose. I think there are a few. It's Cleveland, Cincinnati. Where are you leaning so far?
So I think I saw it earlier in the chat. Someone said, "Is this the week Cincinnati is going to be?" And I do think this is the week they get their win. I know saying that a heavy favorite will get a win is not the best thing in the world. Yeah, and yeah, I mean Cincinnati's close, very bad to start. They're only 10%. They are, I think they're the highest money line this week, if not first or second. But Cleveland kind of sticks out to me a lot too. I really like Cleveland. I'm going with my strategy of you can't pick the best, or not necessarily the best, the highest owned plays, and some of these extremely large survivors that I'm in. So Tampa Bay probably off. Maybe I put them in one of my final ones, but primarily leaning like Cincinnati, Cleveland, stuff like that.
I think that's fair. And again, we told people to fade LA last week, and they were like the only team that won. So hopefully you either didn't listen to us or whatever team you picked instead won. It's just an absolute crazy week last week. I know someone in our Discord was like his friends and family or work league, whatever, was down to 4 people. And at that point, if you're in week 3 and only 4 people are left, I think you can play it pretty straightforward. You don't have to get too crazy. I think let other people make mistakes. And whereas, we're talking about a lot of game theory and stuff here, the DraftKings one still has like 4,000 people left, and some of these other bigger ones, like the Circle one. So that you can still play your game theory. But I think if you're in a smaller one and not many people are left, just play it pretty straightforward.
Yeah, if that's the case, you just hammer what you think is going to be the best plays and the highest money lines. In this case, like Tampa Bay, something like that, and just hope that one of those 4 people or one of those 10 people, however many are left, just picks a wrong one and gets knocked out. And kind of like DFS, Brian, where the largest field contest you got to get a little crazy. As closer and closer you get to head-to-heads, you have to play it. You don't have to get as crazy.
Yeah, exactly. That's a very good way to describe it.
Yep. Ed said, thoughts on Andrews this week? Cheapest he's ever been in sub 10% ownership. I don't know about you, Brian. I'm kind of off Andrews for literally everything.
Yeah, I saw a stat a couple of days ago. He is pass blocked on 10% of Lamar's dropbacks. That number was like 2% last year. Combine that with how he looked in week 1. I think, and again, I know, what is his ownership? If it's not like 1%, I don't think it's worth playing. If he's like 1%, sure. We have Andrews at what? Mark Andrews, 7%. I think it's 6% too high. I mean, based on his pass blocking, based on how he's likely his increased role, them running. I mean, I get it. If you want to play it, that's fine. But Andrews is going to have to show me or be 1% before I play him.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see here. And then Ed also says, I got 1 entry through in my 35K first with the Jets. Also going with Cincy. Only 330 people left out of roughly 1,350. Yeah. Good job. Let's go, Ed.
Yeah, that's still big enough to where you can keep the game theory alive.
Yeah, exactly. And we're going to close it out with a question here from Jose. It says, best DK defense. Last week, Brian, it was Arizona at the top of the model. And not good for my Bo Nix chance. Tampa Bay Buccaneers are the #1 defense in our model. Do you agree with that? Or what do you think?
I mean, we're trusting the model always. But I don't love seeing that they're 22% freaking owned. They're going to be like 30 or 40% in high stakes and small field. I'd rather just drop down to Seattle or drop down to Baltimore, who is literally 1/20th of the ownership and right next to them. So I think low risk, really small contest, Tampa Bay is your answer. If you want to just pivot any little bit at all, especially on a team that doesn't have 3 or 4 defensive injuries, then I would go to Seattle or Baltimore.
I was gonna say, yeah, I actually like Seattle a lot more in that case. Even though it's only $500 increase, you get like 20th of the ownership. So
yeah, it's crazy
right there. Yep. Let's see here. Actually, last question from Hawk Dart: Shaheed or Olave? Shaheed for me. He catches 100 yards, touchdowns every play. So that's for me.
I will say, and we were talking about this in the Snap chat a little earlier. Olave higher owned and higher priced. You would not think that would be the case, but it's a different game in 2024 for NFL DFS. Not as much recency bias. Mm-hmm. With that said, let's be anti-recency bias or recency bias. Recency bias. I don't know. Whatever the answer is. Maybe you just play Shaheed at lower ownership and lower price. And he's outscored Olave through 2 weeks. So maybe that's just the smooth brain answer. The chart moves where it's like smooth brain and then the dark forest and it's like the average IQ take. It's like Shaheed, Olave, and then Shaheed again. So maybe it's just Shaheed.
Recency bias. You can't do recency bias. Recency bias.
Exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, so that'll close it out. So if you guys have any more questions, comment down in the video below. We also have our Discord, occupyfantasy.com/Discord is where you can go ahead and check us out. The plug is up. Chris's preview video is up with all of the actually good top plays as well. So go ahead and check that out. Occupyfantasy.com is where you can get a membership with us. Check out our lineup builder, all the good stuff at all. And then, as Brian said, Monday we'll have the short slate video with him and Jack. Also the plug as well. Sunday night football plug. Bunch of plugs coming out. I think that we'll pretty much do it. There's no MMA this week, so I think I talked about everything. So any last thoughts, Brian?
No, that's it. Just once again, check out Chris's video. It's up on the channel. All the actual good plays are on there, like you said, Moose. So check out Chris's video, Discord, and please subscribe. We're almost at 10,000 subscribers. I'm gonna do that giveaway as soon as we get 10,000. So make sure you are subscribed to the channel.
Yep. So yeah, get us to 10K, and we're going to do some cool stuff there. But until next time, Moose and Brian from OccupyFantasy.com. Have a good night.